Okay, so I was really excited for this project this month. This is the Smart Art November box, and I had never used air dry clay or acrylic paints before, so this was all new to me. And I decided to do something a little bit different. So instead of just doing the flat image like it shows in the pamphlet, if you guys watched the unboxing video, we went through the pamphlet and you would have seen that the examples that came in the pamphlet were done on a flat piece, but I decided that I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I wanted to make it more of a 3D piece. So for the prompts were fox, scarecrow, rain boots, and fall leaves. So right now I'm starting with the fox, and I'm doing him, and then I'm going to do a scarecrow with rain boots and some fall leaves. And I also added some pumpkins and some scarecrows, but unfortunately I wasn't recording at that point, so you don't get to watch me make the pumpkins and the scarecrows, but you will get to see me paint them. So what I thought of these products, I really enjoyed working with the clay, but I found it did dry out really quickly. So once it started to dry, it was kind of difficult to stick the pieces together. And I found if you added a little bit of water, it almost acted like a glue and it would glue the two pieces together. So that worked out really well for me. I did that. Also, I stuck to pretty much 2 or 3 of the main tools. So I really liked the wooden one that had the little skinny pointed tip to it because that was really good at getting into those grooves and kind of helping connect the pieces together. And also the long wipe away tool that had the pointy end. I really liked that because I was able to create some texture on the fox and use it to put the eyes in and stuff like that. So that tool was really great too. Once I figured out those 2 tools were pretty much all I needed, I didn't really touch the other tools, which I'm kind of sad about because I would have liked to try them out a little bit more. But I kind of found the 2 things that worked for me and I just stuck with them. So here you can see me using that long tool with the pointy end to do some fur texture on the fox. So what I was doing was taking some water and rubbing it onto the fox to soften up the clay a little bit. And then I would take that tool and create sort of like a hair or fur pattern. So I was trying to take it and scrape it in all different directions to create sort of a hair texture pattern, and that worked out pretty good. I could have went a little bit deeper looking back at it, but it worked pretty well for that. So now I'm creating the scarecrow, and I'm just rolling out one long thin piece, and that's going to be the arms, and then there's going to be little straw sticking out at the end of the arms. And then I'm making a piece for his neck and his head, which is like a sack of straw. And then I'll be making a bigger piece for his body and his legs, and then just a little chunk to do the rain boots on the bottom. I also decided to put a hat on him, which I think really added to the piece. I liked the hat, and then eventually at the end I put one of the birds on the hat and one on his arm. I think that looked pretty cool. The scarecrow didn't take as long as the fox, but I didn't want him to be as detailed either. And for the straw part in the arms, all I did was just take that same tool with the long pointy end And I took a little bit of water and I rubbed it over the end where the straw would be sticking out of his shirt. And I just tried to create some long strokes there to indicate some straw was coming out. So right here you can see me taking the fox and putting him on top of an eraser, because I didn't realize over time his little legs were sagging because of the weight of his body. So his legs ended up being a little bit bent and he looked like he was more hunched down than the standing up that I wanted him to be. But next time I would just prop him up and let his legs hang on something, like I'm using this eraser to do that now. So that's just something to be aware of, because I think his body to his legs was just a little too heavy. So now I'm creating our fall leaves for this piece, and I tried to make them in different shapes, but they were just so small it was really hard to get that detail into them. So I ended up just doing one shape overall, and it was like a pointy end, a little bit bigger to another pointy end. And I tried to make some stems for them. Some of the stems ended up falling off because they were just so small. And I tried to take one of the tools that had like some little crinkled or little pieces like taken off of it. It was a little bit different of a tool to try to make some texture on the leaves, but that didn't like look good at all. It was just squishing them. So here I'm making the grass for the bottom of the piece, and what I did was just take a piece of the clay and I rolled it all over the top of that little piece of wood that we had received. And I took some crinkled up tin foil and I was trying to make some texture with that, and what I ended up doing was just rolling it on and tapping it on to that piece, and it did make sort of like a bumpy texture, but I found it looked more like ground rather than grass. So what I ended up doing was taking a pair of tweezers, and I was just kind of tweezing and pulling at the clay, and that made little pieces that would come up, and that looked more grass-like. Okay, so now I'm starting with painting the grass part, and I'm just showing you the supplies that I'm using. I'm using a couple of the brushes that came in the kit, and the bigger brush I'm using that I bought myself because the big brush that came in the kit was just shedding like crazy. So here I'm taking just a regular green, a blue green, and a little bit of red to darken it up, and I'm going along the edges and I'm filling in the grass. And I really had to figure out a good water to acrylic paint ratio here, because like I said before, I had never used these paints before, and I wasn't quite sure how much water, how much paint to use. So it was a little bit of a learning curve doing this project, but I still really enjoyed it. So I found for the grass, I had to add a little bit more water than I thought would normally be needed, because it really needed to get down into the grooves and the crannies that was in the grass. So once I started adding a little bit more water, it flowed on that a little bit better. I also took a little bit of light green and I just lightly brushed it on top of the grass a couple of times just to create some highlights throughout. And I also used a little bit of like a lemon yellow, an orange, and a red to go on top of the leaves. And I did that a couple of times just to mix up the color a little bit. At first they were a little bit too bright orange, so I did go back and tone them down a little bit. And then I'm mixing up a nice reddish orange for our fox, and I'm going to go on top with the black first, and I do his little paws, and then I put the red orange of the fox in, and then I'm going to go on top with the white, and I'm trying to flick back into that red orange color, and I'm trying to create a little bit of fur texture there. And I do the same thing in his ears. I take the black and I try to create little flicks to, represent some fur. I think I enjoyed using the acrylic paint the most because I was really surprised how well it stuck to the clay and how well it mixed. And once I started to get a feel for it, I was really enjoying it. And again, I'm really taking my time with this fox because I do want him to be the focal point, really. And I think that adding those little grooves in the beginning in the clay really did help with some fur texture. I didn't bother going in with any extra shading like I did in the grass because I kind of just wanted this to be a really simple piece because it's the first time I've used all these products. So I didn't want to go crazy with a bunch of detail and stress myself out if it wasn't working. But I think the little fur texture that I had already created did help a lot with that. So here comes the little scarecrow, and I'm starting with the rain boots, which are classic yellow, of course. I added a little bit of a deeper yellow just in between to suggest some kind of shadow in there. And then, of course, he's got the blue jeans going on. And I gave him sort of an orangey shirt. And after I regretted using another orange for a shirt, I kind of wish I made it a different color. Because once all the piece was put together, the red-orange fox, the yellow-orange leaves, and the orange pumpkins, and then his orange shirt, I just felt like it was a lot of orange overall. But I mean, this is a fall piece too, so there's that. And then I decided to make his little hat black too, and I kind of regretted that also because once I decided to put one of the crows on his hat, it was kind of black on black, so it didn't stand out as much, but I just thought the crow looked so cute there. Okay, so now you're seeing the pumpkins. So I did a little set of 3 pumpkins with one on the top, and then I did 1 pumpkin separate just for some variety. And I'm just doing like a classic orange on these pumpkins, and then I come back with a little bit of like a brownie green to go on top with the stems. And I do the same thing with the single pumpkin. I apologize you didn't get the footage of me creating these with the clay, but I didn't realize that I wasn't recording at that time. So I will try to watch that in the future. I do apologize. But basically all I did for the pumpkins was to create a little ball, and then I took that tool that had the really nice long point, and I just started making little lines from top to bottom, and I just got deeper and deeper and sort of made like little crevices in the pumpkin, and it worked out really well. Then I painted the little crows in sort of a blue-black, and I left the little beak free so I could put a yellow afterwards. And I'm just going back in and touching up the scarecrow as I need to. And I think I'm adding that yellow to the crows now. And there I'm just going in with that darker green mixture. And I think I added a little bit of like red in it as well to make it sort of like a browny green. And I'm using that for the stems of the pumpkins. And yes, I did get some paint on my hands, but I'm not too concerned about that. It washed off easily with some soap and water. So that's not a big deal. So here's the fun part. I'm placing everything on, deciding where I want it to go, and I am using some Gorilla Glue to make sure everything stays on there. I wasn't sure if the craft glue was going to be quite strong enough for that at this point, so I'm glad I did do the Gorilla Glue, and I'm just gluing everything individually on there and placing it how I want it, and that's the piece.
So that is our smart art project for the month, guys. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. This was fun to make. So we've got our fox, our fall leaves, our rain boots, and our scarecrow. So I decided to do it a little bit differently, put everything together. I did use the Gorilla Glue just to hold everything on here because I wasn't sure if like craft glue was going to be strong enough. So I did do that, but I hope you guys really enjoyed this. And if you did, please like the video, subscribe, and stay tuned for my next videos. Thanks for watching.